Welcome everyone to today's webinar. We are very excited to host you for today's webinar. And without wasting any time, I would just start with the agenda for today's webinar. Initially, I'll be just introducing our speakers, our guests for the day, followed by we'll directly dive into the topic, that's remote contact center. That's the need of the hour in today's new normal. Our speakers will be discussing about the behavior shift or the business shift that it's going to pose. Then we'll directly dive into the challenges and solutions that the businesses would have, because these challenges are new, unprecedented in these current times. So the solutions are also very new, and we would like to hear from our speakers, our guests for the day. What are the challenges from their experiences? What should be the solutions for those challenges as well? Then we'll discuss very briefly about the ready-made solutions that are already in the market that you guys can have for for these challenges. Sachin, can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah. Once the discussion is over, we will open the floor for question answer round, and you can see a question section on the GoToWebinar panel. Please feel free to drop in your questions here, and we'll take up all these questions one by one in the end, right? Very welcome to all our speakers. I would like to welcome Mr. Joe Jackson. He's the Director of Business Operations at Dalex Finance. Joe's leadership skills lie with developing, managing, and motivating technology teams and their corresponding sales and support teams as well. Joe has been influential in the development of strategy for the SME market at several financial institutions, including Fidelity Bank, Bond Financial Services, and Dalex Finance and Leasing Company Limited. Very welcome, Joe. Moving to the next guest, Mr. Ikenna Odike. He is the CEO of Outcess Solutions. Welcome, Ikenna. So Ikenna is a visionary tech entrepreneur and the founder of Outcess Solutions Nigeria. Ikenna has built a diverse career in sales, business development, and customer engagement across industries, including oil and gas, logistics, and IT. Ikenna understands and excels at the innovative and strategic application of digital solutions to optimize the performance of organizations. We're glad to have you, Ikenna, on the floor. Our third guest of the day is Sachin Bhatia, co-founder of Ameyo. Sachin is a co-founder and heads global sales and marketing for Ameyo. A computer scientist by education and a product person at heart, Sachin has been involved in understanding needs and delivering customer engagement solutions to consumer-facing companies. He's been working with CIOs and customer experience leaders in over 60 countries over the last 16 years, believes problems is in emerging markets and the unique solutions required. Thank you, Sachin, for joining us. We are very happy to have you on board as a speaker. I welcome you all, and I would like to take Sachin the floor and start the discussion.
Thank you so much, Nimish, and thank you for inviting my friends Ikenna and Joe in this session. I think it's going to be very, very fruitful for the audience. For record, this webinar has received over 200 applications only from West Africa. So I think the problem is really, really relevant. And this time I'm going to do this a little differently. I want to make sure that I get enough of the local knowledge to come in as we are talking about these issues. Me as a founder of Ameyo, and Ameyo as a company has experience across the belt from Japan till Nigeria in the emerging market world, Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa completely covered. And we are doing the Conversations 20 series focused on regional issues, regional problems in the customer engagement contact center space. So without further ado, let's address the elephant in the room. Any other crisis has not impacted our lives, both professionally, personally, not even close to what COVID-19 has done. And this is true across geographies. I was talking to Ikenna earlier and Joe. I think lockdowns, social distancing, or I would rather call it physical distancing. I don't think there should ever be social distance, but physical distancing, and the impact it has had on behaviors of consumers and the workforce is quite incredible. All of us, or at least most of us, were taken by surprise when COVID happened. And I think the first reaction was, how do you keep operations running? And I'm talking from a contact center perspective, because contact centers usually are very closely knit. And I think first reaction that we observed is, how do I immediately move things remote so that my teams can work from home, if you may. Now, uh, you see on the slides that the top things that came to mind, and we were engaging with hundreds of customers at that point of time, is how do I manage infrastructure, how do I manage uncertainty, and then immediate solutions around VPN. And we had contact centers up and running. I mean, Ameyo did a campaign itself, and we got about 50,000 agents running in a week and a half. Now, let me bring you guys in, Ikenna and Joe. I just want to know that once you realize that it's COVID is happening and we might not be able to come to offices. Joe first, if you may. Joe, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Joe Jackson, and I'm the Director of Business Operations for Dalex Finance. Our business really involves providing digital finance, digital loans, digital investments to rural and peri-urban Ghana. And the contact center is actually a fundamental part of our operations. It's not just for support, but it actually acts as a key part of the operations. So as soon as the lockdown was mooted, even before it was announced, well, we immediately, as part of our business continuity, by the end of, by early February, we realized that we could face a lockdown. And so we had started putting into place a business continuity plan, and started thinking of working remotely, because in our case, all the operations are centralized. And if we shut down the contact center, effectively the business shuts down. So business continuity demanded that we look at how we're going to, and some were very mundane issues, like how would the staff react to it? How do we get them the bandwidth to access? How will the systems we have react? How slow, how fast? And obviously, as a financial institution, controls, security of data, the issues go. So we had a plan, and we kicked in that plan, and we used the weekend preceding the lockdown to do a full dress rehearsal. And that was actually very key to our smooth running, where we had we had a full-blown, I call it a Durbar or a meeting, where all the key players were there. We laid out the plans. Then we had a full dress rehearsal over the weekend, starting from Friday till Sunday. And because we operate, the only day we don't operate is Sunday. We operate full, almost 16 hours a day. It was on Sunday we had a full-blown debrief, and then we kicked it in on Monday. Essentially involved shutting down the contact center, moving everything remote. The first few days, I promise you, were scary. But after the first week, things got much better. But I think the first thing is really kicks off with a business continuity plan, where everybody had a stake, from HR to finance to everybody had a stake, and then kicked in with the full-blown series of departmental and then full-blown meeting where everybody, all the huge meeting where all the supervisors were able to express their opinions, and then dress rehearsal and the debrief before we kicked in.
Excellent, excellent. So 3 days full management, dress rehearsal, Monday we are on, and then maybe a few corrections over the week. And you were said going. I remember our teams discussing you guys moving remote, and I should tell you that you guys did it quite fantastically. Ikenna, how about for you in Nigeria? How was the first reaction and the initial steps that you guys took to go remote?
Thank you, Sachin. So essentially, because we have very wonderful customers, and by wonderful, I mean very demanding, they were very quickly and very early on asking us for our BCP plans for supporting the operations. So they were very integral in our planning. We worked with them quickly. So they basically gave us metrics. So for example, if we're working for, say, Dalex, and we have 200 agents working for them, they said to us, okay, here's a percentage for BCP that we must have in place because of this COVID pandemic shutdown that's going to happen. And then so we quickly had those people ready, and they took systems home. So there was the issue at the beginning around security of the systems to be sure that the agents lived in areas where it was safe for them to take the systems home and leave the systems in their home, and there will not be any theft. And then, of course, the issue of data connectivity. So, but the good thing is that we actually had ample time to sort all of this out and quickly had the agents even working from home before the shutdown actually happened. So it was more or less smooth, sailing, again, because we work with our partners who drive really, really high standards in terms of how we service them. So we worked with them to ensure that the right infrastructure was in place. We had connectivity to the office, the backend security was ensured, data protection. There was some discussion around, okay, how do we ensure that the agents don't have access to the data and they're not able to copy the data even as they're working from home and all of that. So we basically deployed some remote monitoring tools on the systems that were taking. And so we made sure, of course, that they're using our systems, and we did install some applications to ensure that no one can actually tamper with the information on the system. So from a security perspective, okay, that was covered. And then so, gradually we started moving. So if you imagine that we have around 600 call center agents who work from our center, today we have less than 40% of that still working from the contact center. And the plan is that by the end of this month, 100% of them are working from home.
Wow, that's a big number to move, bro. And I know Ikenna and his team for I think almost a decade, if I'm right, and very enterprising, and a very reputed player both as a system integrator and in the contact center space. So a BCP plan, a partial shift and then a full shift, and I would like to share some of our experiences. Of course, as a business, I think even before the government announced, Ameyo moved completely remote with its employees. But we are not a contact center; we are a product company. But the magic happened when we started getting calls from our customers that they need to sort of have a BCP plan and move completely remote. And this was at volumes that we hadn't even imagined, right? So we today serve, I think, over 500 enterprises, overall 2,000 plus customers, and we had on a single day a Byju's with 9,000 agents requesting us to completely move remote, and HDFC with 3,500 agents to start exploring how we can do that securely. And this was happening across the globe. So we set up dedicated teams who are only focused on migration to work from home. And across 15 countries, 50,000 agents were moved remote on the Ameyo platform very, very quickly. I have a few names here, but there are a few learnings that we had. The first learning was that there are things that we take for granted, like availability of internet connectivity, and even availability of laptops. So you'll not believe, but one of the biggest innovation that we have done in recent times is to be able to come out with a mobile app on Android that can completely run an agent application that is required in an enterprise contact center, because we realized that our customers were not able to even get laptops to the agent's home, or power situation was really bad, and can you now run the whole application with, and I'm not talking about a simplistic version, I'm talking about a complete contact center application to be run completely on a mobile phone. So those were some of the learnings. However, I think a few weeks into the lockdown, that initial chaos settled in. People were, running remote, and either partially or completely, and the noise sort of settled down, and I think operations continued. But now, we are experiencing something very, very interesting, and that's what we want to talk about. It was not this one-time reaction of moving things remote and making things work, but the question was, would it be a bigger change than what we have anticipated, right? So I'll tell you a theory, and then I'll bring Ikenna and Joe in here. Think about how you're interacting with your families, friends. That has changed radically, right? Uh, the physical touch, the human-to-human physical space sharing has reduced, and in the personal space, me talking to my friends over Zoom and WhatsApp, and that's how, I was just telling that we are having those beer parties on Zoom. Now think that what is the connection between a business and a consumer, and how will that be addressed? A lot of people are talking about automation in these times, right? That customers would do self-service. And I think it's a great thought. It's a great idea. That idea has been there. But I think the human-to-human interaction that the contact center drives today is more important than ever. So contact centers, we've always had this theory of contact centers being cost centers or profit centers. But more importantly than ever now, I think sales, service, collection is going to be driven from the contact centers and not just supported, because that's the last line of engagement, as I call it, that a contact center has to offer to the consumer. It used to be the first line, but this is the only line which is possible now, that you can have a human being talking to another human being, because your field sales is not going to work. The field visits are very, very less, and that's not short term, guys. That's going to be long term. Now, apart from the contact centers driving this human to human engagement, I think some very big opportunities that would come in. But more about that later. Let me bring in Ikenna this time. Ikenna, what do you think? Automation, human to human, is something radically changing, or the management is still going to look at contact center the way they were looking?
Essentially, from my experience, what I have seen in the past few years, there was a lot of talk about automation and automation taking over from lower live agents, person-to-person interaction. But if you look at the trend, that hasn't happened. Automation essentially has almost peaked. And yet you see that there's still a lot of human-to-human interaction that's taking place. Now, in this COVID-19 pandemic environment we find ourselves in, you will also see that today people are talking more to one another. Studies have shown that if you compare today's data for telcos, for example, in terms of talk time, it's almost double what it was at the same time last year. So almost 100% increment in talk time. So people are seeking that human touch. So it is clear that, yes, while automation will continue to be relevant to an extent, this, given the period that we are in right now, you will find that human-to-human interaction will be valued even more. Because remember, what automation was supposed to do really was to take mundane tasks and automate them. Okay, and then it was also at a time where there was a lot of congestion in the contact center. So customers trying to use different channels to reach out to organizations and finding congestion, and then customers and companies saying, oh, we need to automate this process, so we'll reduce the traffic going to our contact center. right? So there was really an option. Today, you don't have the option of going into a bank branch, for example, because most people want to, stay away, keep the physical distancing, and reduce the amount of time. Even the institutions themselves want to also reduce the amount of time that people spend in an office because that increases their risk of getting contaminated. So it is clear, to me and from my experience and observation that really, person-to-person interaction will continue to grow, given the situation that we find ourselves in. So that means that contact center will continue to be even more relevant with the agents.
So Joe, in your case, I know that contact center was always the central point which was driving these three functions, when we were deploying. But has any thought changed? Is there any other discussion at the management or the board level to look at contact centers more critically, or is it business as usual for you guys?
Okay, now the two sides to this. One is that I do agree with Ikenna in the sense that the more we are forced to do physical distancing or stay away from each other, the more we seem to crave the human contact, albeit over a digital medium. So that is there, and we're finding that even with customers that were typically doing self-service. Now, I must say that our experience has been this, that we've segmented the customers broadly according to urbanization. The urban customers typically don't mind self-service. The rural and peri-urban customers do not like self-service. And I call them digital immigrants. They have to deal with it, but they don't like it. And so we have found that it's not, even in going digital and providing a digital service, the contact center had to be upfront and center, because the guys don't want to do things themselves. They want to talk to a human person, and still the trust is in someone physical who speaks to them. And key thing, speaks to them in the language they understand and can identify with, and not just some fancy accent. So even if you spoke in English, it had to be the English that they understand. In our side of town, more closer to pidgin than the full-blown Oxford accent, if you like. But so what we realized was that we couldn't. For us, there was no option. We couldn't take the contact center away. It had to stay there because of who we are, our customers were, and the way they behaved, and so our only option was to get the contact center to work from home, get them to work remote. It wasn't an option. And I dare say that even the urban customers are calling the call center a lot more. So in truth, where we are is the issues. How do I repurpose my contact center, which is even more important, into a contact center that can be in compliance with the social distancing rules?
Absolutely, sure. Absolutely. And we echo the sentiment across our customers. We have observed that the call volumes are up by at least 50 percentage points, sometimes as high as 200% point. People are exploring automation, but it is very, very evident that customers are looking at connecting with the human, for whatever be the use case, whether it's sales, service, collections. Yeah, one interesting trend is that there's definitely a need to augment those channels along with so voice as a channel, and then WhatsApp as a channel, for example, in our part of the world is gaining a lot of popularity, but you still need a human being on the other side. That's something that we have seen across. You can't just have a bot answering it. Bot could do a little bit of self-service, and maybe qualification, but you need to put a human in front of the customer very, very quickly. Now, as we understand that the human-to-human interaction in contact centers is more important than ever, it begs a question that are remote contact centers in for a short stint, or are we in for a major disruption? Let me give my thoughts. Now, the contact center function, whether you're a BPO or an in-house contact center, as we call them, captive contact centers, the cost equations or the ROI equations are very, very simple. The agent, the infrastructure, those form the majority or bulk of the cost. Now, we did a little bit of survey and research, across our customers, and we asked them a simple question that if we look at infrastructure as one cost, so when I say infrastructure, that's cost of real estate. In India, we call it cost of desk, right? So how much am I spending on this desk every month? That includes power, that includes internet, and any other added frills to support that infrastructure, and compare that to the total spend on the agent. It's actually of the order of 25-30%. Now, assuming that the agent cost is about 50% of the overall cost, and you are able to reduce 25%, or you're able to think of 25% reduction, that's about 12.5% reduction in cost of operating in contact centers. That's almost equivalent to the total gross margin that a lot of BPOs have. And I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers, but I've done a little bit of maths around it. Now, if most contact centers are operating at 15-20% gross margin, and you have this opportunity to reduce 12.5-13% cost, we were wondering whether people are actually looking at this as short term, because our first anxiety was, will this run? And we have seen that it runs. There are some challenges that we're going to talk about challenges. But if this is workable and people who are going to pull this off, this is going to be a very long-term strategic advantage for folks who are able to pull off remote contact centers, even in the post-COVID era. Today, it's a necessity. But is this a short-term necessity, or this is going to be a major business disruption? That's the thought that we had. I will leave some advantages that I have on the screen, but let me bring in Ikenna this time first. Ikenna, what do you think? This is short-term, long-term? Is this a real advantage? What have you observed? What are you discussing at the board level?
Thank you, Sachin. This is an interesting topic, I must say. So I'll look at it from two perspectives. One is what our customers are saying. So the customers that we sell contact center applications to, and then I'll talk about what we are doing from an in-house perspective. So the customers that we sell services to, they are still very cautious about the way forward. So what they're doing is that they're hedging their bets, and they're saying, okay, we will continue to keep our in-house contact center and have some of the agents come to the office while some work from home. So they do a rotation at the moment. Now, they haven't really discussed about the long-term implications of this. But I believe that in the next couple of months, they will come to that discussion, and they'll make a decision around that. Now, we as an outsourcer, very simple. What we have said to all our customers is 100% of our agents are going to be working from home. So for us, it's not a temporary measure at all, because we have seen the cost advantages, and they're immense. I mean, I'll give you an example. I mean, we were talking about this earlier. If you look at attrition as a cost in the contact center, and look at the cost of retraining, rehiring, okay, and then of course the people who are leaving, and then the experience that they are going with. With what is happening right now, attrition has dropped to almost 2% or below, right? So that's a huge cost savings. If you just talk about, look at that alone. Then, we have peculiarities in Nigeria. So power is another issue. I mean, when you think about how much we ordinarily would spend in a month, around $10,000 a month on diesel, right? Now, today, I'm spending about 1/3 of that. That's a huge cost savings. Now, the only area where we're still trying to work out the best way to manage is data, because when you pay for data in bulk as an enterprise, it comes in at at a very reasonable price. Now you have 600 agents, you have to provide data to them individually. So we're still working out that to say, okay, how do we work with our suppliers, our vendors, to ensure that we have a pricing that is almost similar to what we have as an enterprise? So that's really the only area where we need to, fine tune. Other than that, there are, and if you're talking about space, for example, okay, so we have 2,500 square meters of space, and I don't see us retaining that space in the next 3 months when our rent is used for renegotiation, right? So clearly there are huge cost benefits to work from home, and of course we have to just suppose that with security, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later on.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Ikenna. And Joe, let me also bring you in. You run a fairly sizable operation for a captive. Does that apply for captive also? I know that you mentioned when I was chatting with you that there are actually other advantages of they being very close to their family, and Ikenna mentioned about iteration. So cost is one side advantage, but then the agent engagement and people are going to be very, very happy doing this. So what are you hearing from your teams?
Well, I must say that my team, they on the HR side, the agents are extremely happy. And they're happy because you've cut commute times. And remember that it's not just the commute time, it's the shifts and etc. that go with it. You've given them more time with the family. They are actually, this has increased their take-home pay because they don't have to pay for transport. So on the agent side, and I'm seeing exactly what Ikenna is saying, that attrition has gone down simply because you've got a happier agent who is actually earning more because his costs have gone down, his cost of transportation has gone down. Now, and they are also perceived to have less risk because they don't have to join public transport, where, frankly, social distancing is not an issue. But on the flip side, what we are finding is that what the gains from infrastructure costs coming down have partially transferred to increased costs on the agent side. Ikenna talked about data, which was key. The next thing was that since they're working from home, we found that we had to provide each agent with a device. Whereas when they were working from the call center, the devices were shared. And I must tell you that the ability for us to switch to a mobile solution on Ameyo was really, really helpful, because we could then even say use your own device. Because initially, one of the costs we were worried about was providing every single agent with a laptop instead of a shared device at the office. And then we had to look at some things very basic, a chair. Now, when you come to the office, you get a nice swivel chair. It's not common to find somebody to have a nice swivel chair and a desk to work from home. So we had to come up with a scheme for providing them with chairs for those who didn't have. So the costs shift a bit, but all in all, you have a happier agent. And even if we don't make as much as the estimated, anything from 12.5% to 25%, even if we made a 10% saving and a happier agent, we're ahead of the game. I tell you this, the lockdown has been lifted, but we are not going back to the contact center as it was before. We had a meeting at the end of last month, and the decision was that we're going to keep this regime possibly till the end of the year. We'll then do an evaluation, because we got to also look at what are the long-term issues. There are a few things that bother us. What about the culture? What about the onboarding process? But at this moment, it's not a temporary thing. It is definitely going to stay till the end of the year.
Absolutely. And again, congratulations to you guys for the foresight. But I can tell you that across the world, management teams have started looking at this as a very, very serious strategic advantage and not just a reaction to the pandemic. And hence, this is going to stay. Mentioned about furniture and comfort and convenience and data. I think those are the teething challenges or capital expenditure that you have to do in this strategic advantage. But imagine that 2 years down the line or 1 year down the line, I think the behavior of agents, the kind of people who will be hired as contact center agents with very high accountability, very high ownership, very little supervision required. I think bring your own devices can become a norm in future. And maybe you will have offices as hubs where you still want a corporate culture to be built, but the operations are going to be completely remote because there are huge advantages from agents engagement or agents happiness, as Joe pointed out, and of course cost. And it's a very, very big advantage in some of our geographies. Okay, so let me shift gears here. I want to come to the audience now, and we're going to run a very quick poll. And the question is that what is the most critical challenge that you think for your contact centers to be going remote? If you're thinking remote, or let's say if you're planning to go remote, what is the most important challenge? And I'm launching the poll now. The yeah, you should see the okay. So you should see the poll now on your screens. Are you able to see that?
Yes, Sachin.
Okay,
Yes,
cool.
can see them.
So the first section is IT governance and security. How do you make sure it's secure? How do you make sure that infrastructure is robust? The second is onboarding and collaboration. How do you onboard agents to this? How do they collaborate? Contact center is such a closely knit ecosystem. How do you collaborate? The third is business operations monitoring. Would you have that kind of control that you can see what's happening? You were able to see that from the floor, but now you're able to are you able to have the same kind of control on your KPIs the way you had it in office? So those are the three options, and it's pouring in. I'll not tell the result. I'm able to view it, and that's very, very interesting. And if someone of you have those thoughts on there could be other big category challenges, please do put them in the questions as and when we open the question, right? So okay, I think that's we have a decent amount of folks who have voted now. I'll just wait for a couple of more seconds and we'll close the poll. Okay, so last 10 seconds, guys. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, guys. So let me share the results with you. 33% of the people feel IT governance and security is the top issue. 23% of the people feel onboarding and collaboration is the biggest issue, and 43% people feel business operations monitoring is the biggest issue. Now, I can tell you that the audience seems to be folks from business and management, absolutely right. In a very close environment, you are able to have that control. You're able to experience that control on operations, right? Letting go of that control and able to see and measure business, manage business through dashboards is something that is going to drive it. And I agree with the audience here. I think a very educated audience. IT is not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is how do you make sure that the business is in control, and what kind of change management can we bring in? Let me talk through, and Nimish, you can help me with the slides now. Let me talk you through the three issues, the way we look at it, and I'll quickly bring in for a rapid fire, Joe and Ikenna, that what are their immediate thoughts and priorities on this specific issue. So the first category of issue is the IT governance security, and Ikenna mentioned that I think customer data is a super critical thing. How do you establish trust that there is no malintent at the agent end, because data is now getting distributed, especially if it's customer data, right? Not a sales process, but a captive customer data. How do you protect that? That seems to be a big issue. And then the very, very big issue is, earlier we had our IT teams completely managing the network, and we could trust that network. But now you are essentially running contact center from anywhere, where there are hundreds of moving pieces in the network. So it's impossible for you to establish what I will call a fail-safe network. So how do you trust now that what is being said, right? I'm not able to log in. Is that a problem with the network? Is that a problem with the device? Is that the problem with the agent? How do you ensure that, right? So those kind of questions is what we heard. There are some solutions that we have, but we want to bring you guys in very, very quickly. Ikenna, my man, you go first. What do you think are the top 2-3 areas that one can handle this challenge through?
So essentially, I mean, with the last thing that you mentioned around how do you troubleshoot, for example, when it just says they can't log in, what we have done from our perspective really is to set KPIs, right? So you know that in a day you're supposed to take this number of calls, and you must take this number of calls, and that speaks to how you get compensated. Okay, so people are not playing tricks or playing games. The calls are recorded 100%. You can get what they call it, the data. When anyone is logging in, you can use two-factor authentication. So these are things that we have implemented already to ensure that the right party is logging into the system at the back end, to ensure that when they log in, all the interactions are recorded and encrypted, so that no one can. And then you use really firewalls to ensure that people are not able to hack into your system at the back end, and make sure that your operation is running smoothly from that perspective. So really, it's about empowering your agents and also empowering your IT team, okay, to make sure that your security and governance is sorted out. Now, when it comes to business operations and monitoring, again, nothing has changed really. Remember that even when they were coming to the office, quality assessors had the ability to do live badging, to do live coaching. So all those things, all those features are still there. That has not changed in any way whatsoever. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can still monitor your teams. You know who your team leads are, even though they're working from home. They have morning sessions using either Teams or Zoom or whatever online application you're using to interact, even Skype, right? And so they make sure that the team meetings before they go to work happen. So there is constant interaction with the agents. In terms of onboarding, again, what we are doing right now is that we're interviewing people, remotely, okay, and we're training them remotely, and we're onboarding them remotely. So the key measures that we use to get to hire people, that has not changed. What we have added essentially is your ability, okay, to do this remote interview, okay, to show us your work environment will actually enhance your chances of being hired by us.
Man, you are really fast, because you've even got your hiring processes changed for fitment of remote. But that's the point under the onboarding collaboration. But I think he brought in a very important point, that you could actually overcome some of these trust issues by setting very specific KPIs for the agents, and they essentially are responsible. Now, you obviously need to augment it with that they have data and there is redundancy in data. If they're asking you for data, you arrange that. But let that responsibility be with the agent at the end of the day, especially in sales of paper performance kind of processes. In a captive, it's a different story. And let me come to Joe. Joe, what are your thoughts? I know you were implementing firewalls and making sure security, but what sort of governance and security measures did you guys to handle this challenge, or what you're thinking right now to handle these challenges?
Well, the biggest security challenge we faced was really in terms of how to handle on an average month. We used to just handle maybe 4 remote logins from mainly developers and etc. who were working. Now we are handling hundreds of remote logins each day. And that required a rethink of the security infrastructure to manage that process and to be able to identify each remote login and track it. In fact, our biggest single expenditure in the going remote was the review of the IT infrastructure and the new firewalls, etc. we had to put in place.
Got it. Yeah. So remote device management and making sure that authenticated logins and there is enough bandwidth on that end are the biggest points. Nimish, let's go to the next slide. One of the needs that we heard also was that agents should never be able to see customers' phone number. A simple requirement, but I think a very powerful thing that you're having a conversation, but you cannot initiate. You can initiate a call, but you would never see a phone number. That's a very, very powerful thing because privacy is a very, very important angle that you have to show, because agent is finally maybe taking calls on his device. He should not be able to use this data so you don't show the phone number. As simple as that, right? Unless he's asking and customer is sharing willingly, that's a different situation. Second is onboarding and collaboration. Now, how do you ensure that remote agents are productive? There are some of the areas I'll just put in. There are so many applications in a contact center, right? And in a desktop environment, in an office environment, you can teach them that how these applications would work. But now you have agents who are joining remote, will stay remote. What sort of interfaces will come in? These cannot be the complicated business applications that we are used to, right? We don't invest enough in the user experience of the agent, but today it's more important than ever. It should be very intuitive. They should have the information. And then if it's mobile, then everything has to be mobile responsive. Nigeria, I know, has serious power issues. So does India in some of the rural markets. And even if you give everything, if there's no power, what are they going to do? So thanks to 4G and 5G coming in, you can actually do everything on mobile. But is the application, a contact center application for an agent desktop, capable of running on a mobile? Those are some of the things that we have heard. Hiring is a big challenge. How do you have these team meetings and collaboration? In a contact center, you just say, buddy, let's have a chat, and the team leader and supervisor have a one-on-one very quickly. How do you do those things in a remote kind of environment? So let me bring in Joe quickly. Joe, what have you observed? And very quickly, guys, we just have 10 minutes, so I want to do this like a rapid fire. What have you observed? What is most important learning that you have to solve this challenge of onboarding and engagement?
Well, what we really did, and I must admit that the process has started before, because what we did was very simply engage experts who were already experts in developing online learning material. And we had some really good help from the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, who have moved the learning and development process online and actually available. I can recommend it to anybody. They were of assistance to us in getting us online content for onboarding in an interactive, easy manner, so that we could create, because you see, creating that, you lose the coaching process, which is, so you've got to create online content, and they got us the experts who helped quickly move, and we haven't even finished that process. They're still moving our content online so that we can onboard remotely the new staff.
Excellent. Online learning is the way to go, and I agree that if you're able to bring in content in bite-sized content format and agents can consume it, onboarding becomes much more easier. Collaboration is another problem. Ikenna, you want to add something on collaboration? What have you seen? What are supervisors saying? Are they cribbing, I'm not able to talk to my agent, how do I control it, or is everything good?
I mean, I know it will sound as if we've got everything right, but really and truly, we don't have a choice, but to get it right. Remember, we are answerable to large organizations, and I'm talking about Fortune 500 organizations. So we don't have a choice but to get it right. So from the very beginning, we tested all the features that we have. I mean, we mostly use Microsoft Teams, and then also, of course, for some of the agents, they use Skype as well. Okay, but the collaboration is happening, the engagement is happening. I mean, if you imagine that you've broken down your agents to teams, Okay, so there's a team lead that is managing between 20 to 25 agents. Okay, so in that way, it's easier for them to have their interactions happen at that level. Okay, and then the AM, the system manager they report to, that manages about 4 teams at a go. Okay, it's so easy for them to then look at what their team is doing and then report that into the head of operations. So that's how we have structured it essentially. And these collaborations are happening. And even as we speak now, we're doing KPI reviews, half-year KPI reviews for the year, and making sure that everyone really. So I think the key here is to ensure that that interaction is happening on a regular basis. Okay. Yeah. And what I'm finding that even I as a CEO of an organization, I'm actually interacting more with my employees now than even when I was there physically.
Absolutely, and that's good sign. Ikenna, I think it's giving us more time to talk to our folks and giving a lot of opportunities to share our thoughts, fears, uncertainties also, and it is okay. I think people are looking to connect and communicate with leaders, and this is the opportunity because we actually have more time on hand if you see, because our time is also getting saved by a lot of those long meetings are getting those 10 minutes hurdles that you do on Zoom and Google, and I'm sure it's happening across the board, across the world. So great, let's go to the last point very quickly. The last point is on operations and monitoring. How do you make sure that you have a unified view of the distributed workforce? Now, I know some of you have already invested in some of these tools, and we have been working with you guys on that. But think about it, right? The old school contact center infrastructure, PBXs. I can't imagine things being run, a separate quality monitoring system, an on-prem system running today. I think everything has to be like a contact center anywhere. You could log in from mobile, log in from a public internet, if you will. Through a VPN, that's okay. Through a control network, that's okay. Then on dashboards, this has to be now a no-nonsense dashboard that sort of shows from the management to the functional leader to the operational leader how things are going to run. Anything that you have seen changing here, right? Which has become a challenge, like resourcing, scheduling, workforce management. Anything that you feel people should keep in mind. It used to be rostering earlier. I'm skipping shifts these days for multiple reasons because they're logging in from home. But what have you seen changing? Anything from an operational monitoring point of view, right? That you're controlling, running this like clockwork. Anything that you guys have observed? Joe, why don't you come in first very quickly?
Okay. Now, I have to say that management is finding that we are able to keep an eye on operations much better than we were before. And when we talk about the kind of satisfaction we have, it's not just with the staff, it's also with us ourselves, that we are able to spend a little bit more time, less time commuting, more time behind. And I'm finding that I'm doing far more meetings. In fact, aside from my contact center, I have a 3,000 agent network across the country. And I've never had more contact with them than I'm having now. But on to the issue of monitoring. Essentially, you're going to find that you're going to have to review your operations and say, now that everything is remote, that whole flow has to be put under a lens. And then in our case, we did that. So we're finding that everything is now working seamlessly, and everything, what we did was to make sure every bit, we eliminated the manual part of every bit of operation. Even to say a task is completed must be confirmed on our operational system so that somebody else can take over. In that sense, we're fine.
Yeah, good. So one of the things that we observed is that dashboards, because you can't just call up somebody and say, or call somebody in the room and say, so how's it going? You actually start looking at the dashboards more often. Once you look at the dashboards more often, people actually start filling the data in systems more often. And hence, the accuracy of what is being measured and what you're looking at is actually increasing because of this remote thing, which is fantastic because you're not trusting stories. You're looking at a single version of truth, and that is getting better. It's not. I don't think it can. Any data system can get ready in one day. The management keeps looking at it, keeps drilling it down, it keeps improving. That culture has came in. Ikenna, what are your thoughts, man, on looking at operations report, reviewing, monitoring? Is it business as usual or something has changed?
Oh, well, I mean, I must say that I have never been happier reading reports than at this time. You know, it's,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's really so useful because now, you know, those things that we used to take for granted, now we appreciate them a little bit more. When you
Absolutely.
can have a single view of what contact center performance looks like with ease,
Yeah.
you're not calling up anybody. You can actually automate the reporting process. So your report comes into your inbox at 11 a.m. or 10 a.m. or 9 a.m., whenever you choose. And then you can open that report and you can view it. Okay. And then, so when you're having conversations with your managers, they are more meaningful conversations because you have the information beforehand.
Yeah.
And then so it's more meaningful, it is less lengthy, okay, and more impactful. So what we're finding is that leveraging already, I mean, the tools that we have, the Ameyo solution that we have, all the reporting that we need, and then of course, remember also that we share these reports with our customers on a daily basis. Okay, so that also forms a basis for when we do our monthly business reviews. Okay, it makes life a lot easier, to speak to what the performance of the contact center, and so no supervisor, no team lead or AM can come and say, oh, this was the reason why this happened. You can clearly see why. And even, for example, performance issues that relates to connected calls, you can see from the log the reason why the calls are not connecting, for example. So no agent can come and say, oh, this was the reason why I wasn't able to complete my call. You can see it. It's not about asking them. You can query the system and you have that information at your fingertips.
Yeah, thanks, Ikenna. We have seen that the adoption of reports and dashboards has actually gone through the roof after remote, and it's gonna be even more improved. We are investing our own time and energy also on this, but we believe that that's gonna be a differentiator. So if you have not implemented, and this is for the audience, if you have not implemented dashboards that you trust, and you always end up asking questions to your manager, so what is wrong? I think there is something that needs to change so that you are able to look at the dashboards, identify what is wrong, and then discuss how to fix it, which is a very different question from what is wrong. What is wrong should be visible, and the drill down, and then you figure out a solution. So thanks, Ikenna. Thanks, Joe. I think we have covered the three challenges. Nimish, can we very quickly move forward to the next few slides? I want to share that what was Ameyo's learning, and how are we looking at these? So these three challenges is something that we observed across, and we grouped them into the IT, the governance, and the operations. And we realized that different companies are still looking at different models. So there is you still have private cloud. So nobody's looking at pure on-prem right now. Either it's private cloud or hybrid or public cloud, depending on your scale and what sort of roadmap you have on your IT applications. Just move forward, Nimish. I just want to take a couple of minutes to take them through the next couple of slides. So one of the innovations that we did was, today we track about 15 infrastructure parameters, and this is new because we realized that if you're running everything remote, this is fresh out of the kitchen, especially for the mobile app. So whether there is a problem with the mobile CPU, mobile's data, mobile's memory, or even latency on the network, or the behavior of the agent, right? You are actually able to get to, as soon as the agent is, and now we have given an option to the agent to quickly give a feedback. I faced a problem with the call. And the IT guy next second can look at what were the parameters on the device. Was it problem with the device, memory? Is he using too many applications? Or was everything okay and he in isolation faced that problem? In a second, right? That builds a trust in infrastructure, that how could you do that? We are bringing in this for the browser version also, but we did that first for the Android mobile app. Really useful application. Today about 8,000 agents log in to that mobile app daily, only using mobile as the device for their contact center. Let's go to the next slide. The second was on our dashboards. We've done two things. First of all, if you're gonna run this remote, you should be able to run it at low high latency or high jitter bandwidth, because I cannot go and tell an IT guy that I need a less than 5-second jitter, which we used to ask for in contact centers, because that's never going to happen. So how do you make sure that you're able to run at low latency, as well as have those dashboards that are giving you the visibility of both operations level? When I'm saying operations, how many calls each agent has taken, what's the abandon rate, and at a business level, what's the conversion metric for sales, how many promise to pay for collections have happened, what's the NPS going on. So we are adding some of the business KPIs in the dashboard, or enabling our customers to do that on the dashboard on the fly. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, we talked about the mobile application. This is very powerful, guys. If you have not seen it, I request you to go to our website, and maybe we'll do a separate webinar on this. But the mobile app, I think, is magic. And a lot of our customers tell that this might not be a very long-term solution, but if you're in a situation where latency is a problem, power is a problem, this is very useful. You don't want to lose agent productivity even for a couple of hours. So you can have your agent log in from the mobile, and it's business as usual. We even have customers in India who operate on very thin margins, completely running their contact centers on mobile, because everybody has an Android phone here. So you don't need to have laptops. That's a disruption even we couldn't think of, right? So they're saying that all you need is a mobile phone and get trained, and you're a contact center agent now. Imagine the kind of talent you will have access to, because you don't need any other infrastructure, right? Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so we talked about choice. I think on-prem, when I'm saying on-prem, think of it as private cloud, because nobody's investing in on-prem. You should not be investing in on-prem. There should be very limited capex, because you're not sure about what's going to happen. So we've launched cloud with our partners. Ikenna here has done that in Nigeria. We're bringing it across Africa. I think we are the largest player in the cloud contact center space already, but we want to make sure that all our customers are served locally, because it's very important. You can't have it hosted in AWS US and expect everything to run fine in Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Ethiopia. That doesn't work. So we're actually investing a lot of bandwidth, time, money, attention to making sure there is local cloud available in all markets. And if you are a large enterprise, there is also hybrid cloud available. Go forward. Guys, in the meantime, if there are any questions, please put them. Let's go to the next slide. Let's go to questions. Nevis, let's make it interesting for the audience. I don't want. So we just had an example of a customer which is using 7,000 seats completely remote now. This is one of the largest edutech company in India. They've grown by revenue by 200% last year. $1 billion plus valuation, but doing really well. Completely running on Ameyo. Go forward. So we had a set of curated questions, and let me take those questions from the audience. How productive can agents be if they are made to operate in a remote contact center? That's a question from Adibole Ajibade. Let me give one number. I was talking to, and of course, Joe and Ikenna would give their numbers, but I'm talking about a collections company in the Philippines. And the guy said the performance is varying between 80% to 150%, depending on the agent, and it's more on the right. That's how he answered it. And I was quite amazed. This is a collections process he was talking about. But Joe, how do you measure your KPIs? And is it better, worse? Can you give us like color on this?
Well, the agents have, because they have different TATs for the different parts of the process. But I can tell you this, productivity has gone up. It's gone up. And my agents are working longer hours, meeting their targets. There are no complaints on my side. I actually, that's one of the reasons why we're still going to continue working remote until we know what the long-term effect is. But at this moment, productivity is the least of your worries.
Sure. Ikenna, you want to come in? Just give me a number, a range, a percentage.
Well, so I will say that productivity has not dropped. And again, depending on the agents, productivity has actually gone up by, in some cases, 25%. What we're finding is that we have agents who are having power issues. And so let me quickly mention that we're migrating 100 agents to Ameyo Mobile right now as we speak. So, and so we want to test that out quickly and see how we can leverage that going forward as well. Because remember that we have a lot of power issues here. So that Ameyo mobile really will help us to solve that problem, because what it takes to charge a mobile phone is far less than what it takes to charge a laptop, for example. Okay, and of course, BYD, bring your own device, so the agent can actually use their device. So we're also saving money. We're not buying laptops for additional people, right? So that's part of our onboarding process essentially. So I mean, that's the number that we're seeing. You know, agents are begging, actually, those agents who have serious power issues are begging to come to the office to work so that they can improve their productivity.
Yeah. No, I know Nigeria has serious power issues. So yeah, mobile is the solution there. I think number 3 question you've answered that. The question was from Olusegun Omoleo. I hope I got the name right. But yeah.
Olusegun Omoloye.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, that's why we have Okay, so somebody asked the question, what significant role can bots play? I think we already talked a little bit. This was a question from Lawrence. See, I would look at bots as a qualifying, when you can have a very simple query or a qualification happen on chat, but don't think of that as a replacement to human beings. This is a very wrong time to be thinking that, because people are longing for the human touch, is my view. We had a chat on this, so let me just skip that. What steps can you take to ensure data protection? I think there are a couple of questions around that. How can you make sure customer information as financial institutes is remote? This is a question from Funmiukwa. I already talked about that. There's a feature called number masking. A lot of solutions has it. Make sure that your agent is not able to view customer information unless he's on a call. And then there are certain precautions, like on the mobile phone, we disallow taking screenshots or recordings. So there is no way, actually, once you're on a call, you're listening to it, looking at it, and then you cannot, right? And then the mobile phone number, the phone number of the customer is never accessible. Those are some of the things we have observed. Anybody wants to add on security? I think Joe mentioned about firewall and access control. If you're having systems in-house and agents are using it. There was also a mention of two-factor authentication. I think Ikenna mentioned that. Yeah. So any other points that come to your mind to protect information? And keep questions coming in, guys. If you're having more questions, I know we have taken more time than. Yeah. Sorry.
What I would like to add to that is that organizations also have to have a rethink, have a review of their processes, and say, how do we ensure that customer data, okay, doesn't end up in the wrong hands? Okay, how do we tweak our processes, for example? Okay, so there are things that we may need to take away from agents so that they're not viewing that information and that they don't have a chance to pass that information on to another person. So it's a holistic thing. It's not something that the contact center alone can address. It's really about saying, let's take a step back and look at our entire process and how do we mitigate this risk? So it's not just about what the contact center can deliver. It's also about how do we complement what the contact center can deliver. That's what I would say to that.
Got it. There's one question, I think it's more a transactional question, but let me just put it. If you're using Zoho CRM, the answer is simple, yes, please talk to our business team. I don't know why this question came in, but yeah, I think in Senegal, I'm not sure if voice over IP is allowed and can you terminate calls from outside, but we can definitely set up a private instance if that is required. Talk to our team. We also have the, Nimish, can you just open the slide where we have the account managers and the sales folks contact also listed? Yeah, guys, these are the folks from Ameyo, and of course we have Ikenna, and we also have partners in Ghana if you want to get in touch with us. Nimish, if there are any more questions, I can take them now. Otherwise, we have already run like 10 minutes over.
Yeah, I think I'm just waiting. No more questions as of now.
Okay, perfect, guys.
A question just came in, Sachin.
Okay.
So it's Christopher Otugo. He asked that with Ameyo mobile app, can the remote contact center be in operation even after the pandemic to increase workforce?
Absolutely, that's the idea. We are not looking at this. Why do we continue investing in this? Because we are not looking at this as a temporary problem, guys. We are looking at this crisis as a serious opportunity that you rethink how contact centers run, and people can be sitting with their mobile phone in a nice corner in in their house and doing whatever they are doing from your fancy offices today. It's just that if you want to build culture, bring them in. If you want to have a team bonding, bring them in. Otherwise, let them be where they are. I think they'll be the most productive. There's another question. Yeah, I think, one person just commented, I can't hear anyone. I'm sorry. We are using whatever best platforms we can. But we'll have this recording shared on our website. Please feel free to download the recording or listen to it live. With that, I think we will not take more time. Joe, Ikenna, from your brother in India, thank you so much. This was very, very insightful and learning for me also. I think each market has its own nuances, and the power situation in some of the markets that we are seeing in Africa, I think mobile is the way to go. It should be at least a fallback option. And remote is here to stay. Let our agents be close to their family. Let them be more productive, take more ownership, and the businesses will actually make more money and have more margin. So it's a very, very good, healthy win-win for everyone. Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you so much, Ikenna. And thank you, Nimish, for hosting us today.
Thank you, Sachin. Thank you.
Yeah, please take it away. We'll be sharing the recording and sending an email. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for all the help. And thank you for bearing with us. We had over 100 people in the webinar today. So thank you so much, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.